Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Major Minor Talk podcast, your new favorite podcast discussing baseball's top prospects within the NL and AL East. Baseball is back, and now we're just a few weeks into spring training. I've been tuning into some games whenever I can and getting an idea about some of the upcoming faces we should hopefully be seeing in the majors not too far from now. In our previous episode, we explored some of the East's top prospects that were worth keeping your eye on during these early spring training games. And some of those prospects are doing great. Aiden Miller, Roman Anthony, and Samuel Basayo have all been seen doing some nice work in the games that they've played in. But with such a vast amount of players getting time in the field and at the plate during spring training, some light has been shined on some players that might not have had too much attention going into it. For today's episode, I've selected two prospects that I think could definitely be brought up very quickly, even fast-tracked, during this upcoming season that didn't have too many eyes on them beforehand. My first player pick for this episode is Gabriel Rincones Jr., an outfielder for the Philadelphia Phillies organization. The Phillies definitely have a problem with their outfield right now. They have Nick Castellanos limited to right field since that's the only position it seems like he can really hold down. You have Brandon Marsh as your great starting center fielder, but he cannot hit against a left-handed pitcher for his life. You have an exceptional defensive center fielder with Johan Rojas, but he cannot provide offensively. At all, really. And new to the pack, you have Max Kepler, who might be able to fix the offensive hole that the Phillies have if he can play like he did before being injured. But he's also playing left field, a position that he's never played during his entire time in the major leagues. While Justin Crawford, one of the Phillies' top prospects, might be a key figure to mend whatever issues could appear in the outfield during the season, Gabriel Rincones Jr. is definitely another name who can as well. In his time with AA Reading last season, Rincones slashed a .263 batting average, a .487 slugging percentage, and an .843 on-base percentage, with 11 home runs across 258 plate appearances as well. Pretty respectable numbers for a player during his second year in the minor league. However, since arriving to spring training, Rincones has put his power on full display. At the time of writing, Rincones has played in 5 spring training games, taken 9 at-bats, and hit 2 home runs with 4 RBIs, and both of those home runs were absolutely crushed beyond the outfield wall. While being a home run hitter is definitely something that the Phillies' major league roster is in no short supply of, the power and confidence that Rincones has at the plate, I think, has proven a case for himself as a player. Based on both his 2024 and spring training stats, I wouldn't be surprised to see him make his way to AAA Lehigh Valley this season. And if there are issues in the Phillies outfield, which I think is definitely likely based on last season, or if Max Kepler finds his way into a platoon with Brandon Marsh in center field, I think that Rincones could definitely be a candidate to take the spot in left field. My second selected player is Robert Hassell III, outfielder for the Washington Nationals organization. Robert Hassell III is one of 6 players who made their way over to the Nationals back in 2022 as a part of the deal that sent Juan Soto to the Padres. Considering how far removed Soto has been from the Padres, especially now that he's become the player to have the largest contract in the history of the sport, I think it's safe to say that the Nationals won out on this trade. Hassell has remained one of the Nats' top prospects ever since, but has yet to make his way to the majors like Jacob Young, Dylan Cruz, and James Wood, a bunch of the other young guys who came up around the same time. During his 2024 season, Hassell spent a while floating between the injured list and getting playtime with AA Harrisburg. However, he did make his way to AAA Rochester at the tail end of the season and played in 17 games. Hassell is a player that I've had the privilege of seeing play in person. His stats definitely reflect the idea that I have of him. He had a .271 batting average during his time with AA last season and a .728 OPS. While these stats do show a good player, I do think that Hassell is on a different level than James Wood and Dylan Cruz, who rocketed their way through the minors to make their way up to the majors. His extended time in AA has made it difficult to see the case for a quick rise up to the majors like his peers. However, Hassell's brief playtime during spring training does show a case for him to be on a major league roster. A .500 batting average across 17 plate appearances with a homer and 5 RBIs to boot. He definitely is playing at a high level. But the fact that the Nationals roster, especially their outfield, is so young and so crowded, it makes it difficult to imagine where Hassell could go. He could definitely fill in if there would happen to be some extreme injury, but considering how young the outfield is, I don't think that's very likely. If this young Nationals team can begin to play at the level expected of them and make a push for a playoff run this season, Hassell might become an excellent trade piece for the Nats to obtain whatever they might need to add for that run. They would basically be trading an outfielder who is major league ready to any team that would need one. One team that I think would be perfect to trade for Hassell would be the Houston Astros. After this past offseason, especially losing all-star Kyle Tucker, the Astros have been left with some holes in their outfield. While it's difficult to project the Astros making a playoff run this season, if they want to keep up their championship streak, obtaining a player like Robert Hassell would be a very smart move for them. And those are my picks for this episode of the Major Minor Talk podcast. I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about some of the players that I think could be fast-tracked to the majors. If you'd like to follow the show on X, formerly known as Twitter, the link can be found within the description below. And please be sure to subscribe in order to keep updated whenever our next episode is released. Have a good one.